Hello, welcome back to my bi-yearly commentated video. So, the WarThunder packs have gone on sale, finally, and I may have missed out on doing the recommendations for the talismans and GE vehicles recommendations because I was not well, I'm still not really well, and I couldn't really be bothered, but definitely put out a year's video today, yesterday, not sure when the dates line up, but he did air, which he obviously knows a lot about, and the tanks, which is what I pretty much wrote what to say from to say or recommend. So I just wanted to make this as a follow up, just to maybe explain a bit more of my reasoning, and also there's a few vehicles that we actually missed because the link to the discount page does not include all of the vehicles for some reason. So thank you, Gojin. So I'll start off with the King Tiger. So it's a good vehicle. Only tier 4, so keep that in mind if you want to pay $20 for a tier 4 grinder. It's up to you. It used to be, the King Tiger used to be a very, very strong vehicle back in the day when there was less vehicles in the game, of course. These days, it is still a very solid, very strong vehicle. It definitely faces tougher competition now, so you can't just ruffle stomp over everyone. So keep that in mind. German teams may be very questionable at times, but this tank is still very strong. Great gun, decent mobility for how heavy this thing is, and yeah, just a strong vehicle overall. If you want a tier 4 grinder for Germany, I would say it's a decent pickup. Just keep in mind that don't go into every engagement thinking that you're invincible or anything like that, because hit FS exists around this tier now, and even the tanks that don't shoot hit FS, there's quite a few that have very high pen guns that can easily pen your turret. And the ammo, first stage ammo racks are at the back of the turret, so keep in mind that if anyone has a side shot and shoots the back of your turret, you are just dead. So, but then again, try not to get flanked, but can't be really avoided with how slow this vehicle kind of is sometimes. Now the IS-6 is very similar, but instead of having good gun handling, it trades that for uh, even more useful armor and great mobility. Well, relatively good mobility for how well armored this thing is. So the gun is very okay, very standard 122 for the Russians. I hate Russian heavy tanks, so keep that in mind. And this vehicle, very strong. The hull is pretty much well protected against everything but hit FS and I think hash stuff, but using hash these days is kind of an L. Keep in mind the turret is no longer invincible like it was frontally when it was released, but then again that was fixed, so turret is a bit of a weak spot, but it's very small, just like the Tiger 2H. Would recommend, but keep in mind that anything with hit FS will mess your day up, but that goes with pretty much anything that relies on armor these days. T29. This thing was one of the vehicles that was not actually on the front page that we missed. This vehicle on release was probably one of the most overpowered vehicles ever added to the game, as anyone that has played it back then would know. The Emerald did not explode when hit. It has ridiculously strong frontal armor, which is refreshing for a US vehicle these days. And well, back when it was added, it was very refreshing because most US vehicles were just all-rounders, not really specializing in one area. But this thing has a fantastic gun, good armor, tons of 50 cals to destroy annoying things. Yeah, well, I would recommend it, but it's tier 4. The US doesn't really have that many premium vehicles in the game for some reason, off my memory at least. Or at least pack vehicles. Yeah. So there's not many options. Very good for like heavy tanks. Definitely a good pickup. Reload's a bit slow, but if you pen something, they are just dead. So, and it's great pen too. The Souma. This is a vehicle that I picked up this patch that I've yet to play. I'll probably play it tonight when the task reset. Not much I can really say. Its armor for a heavy tank is pretty poor. Its upper hull armor is pretty okay, but its turret armor unexpectedly is not the best from an oscillating turret. Gun handling's a bit whack as well, but it has that 100mm French solid shot launcher, and it is fantastic. If you've ever played the AMX30 TOL 100, you know this gun just slaps. So if you want to grind French, and you might be worried because you've heard how awful the French tree is from Devon, but then again, Devon is blessed with plain planes, and the French planes, from what I understand, are quite the L, but French tanks are quite good actually. Minus tier, like the lower tiers, which are a bit rough, but French tier like 3 to 6 is very good, especially around tier 4 and 5, where their autoloading tanks are, is very good. Their higher tiers are a bit left behind these days, but it's still good, so can't go wrong with this vehicle. Very strong. Will make grinding around French's tier 3 to 5 very easy, because this vehicle is very strong, should be very strong. And it's tier 4, so keep that in mind. You only grind up to tier 5, which, in my opinion, is where the French tree like peaks around tier 5 with like the Souma and stuff like that. But the vehicles beyond that are still good, so don't keep that in mind. The Turm 3. This is basically just a light tank with a auto-loading 105. So it has 0 survivability, 0 armor, but that trades it for having good mobility because it's a Leopard 1, and a great firepower. So a 5-second autoloader on a 105 is fantastic, but the real selling point is the coax 30 mil, which may not have the best pen, but facing light vehicles, it will just shred them. So if you have run to an AA, don't be afraid to just press your machine gun key and just remove them from the face of the planet. So yeah, very good vehicle. It's only tier 5, so if you're looking for a higher tier vehicle, there is better options. But for grinding tiers 4s to 6, it's very good, and I would definitely recommend it if you're not afraid of light tank gameplay. Now the AVRE. Defin's review might have seemed a bit odd here because the early notes I gave him was yeah, this emote. It's basically just a dope gun on a good hull too. So it's more suited to like shorter range maps and engagements where you don't have to lob the shell too hard. Because unless you're like that mod on the forum that's using cheats to auto range find across the map, yeah, it's not very good for long range maps. But otherwise, this tank is great fun. I picked it up a few sales back when I sold like the event F4E for Germany. So very good vehicle, very fun. Tier 5 grind as well, so it's pretty good. Reload is very slow, so keep that in mind, but that's to be expected. I think its reload's actually, yeah, but it's better than the Doom Barn because it is like a low velocity, so it's a bit harder to use, so it trades the easiness of the Doom Barn's gun for more reload, but less velocity. Its armor also is fantastic against heat, as you'd imagine with all the crap that's on it, but otherwise has basically similar layout to the Mark III Centurion, I believe. Definitely recommend if you want something fun to play and don't mind more brawly gameplay with the main vehicle. The M51. One of the vehicles that I grinded Israel with, and one that I would say is not really a high risk vehicle, but oh yeah, I may have forgot to mention these are all vehicles I'd say are like lower risk premiums that you can't really go wrong buying, but this might be a bit on the fence because it's a Sherman at a high BR with a very powerful gun that either does very good damage or makes you want to commit rope. So yeah, and for only a little bit more, there is the higher tier premium, which is the Merkava 2D, which I would recommend over this if you're serious about grinding the tree. Otherwise, though, it's a decent vehicle, but it can only grind up to tier 5, which kind of sucks pretty bad. And finally, the probably the equal most questionable BR premium pack on sale, and that's the T55 AM1. Not much I could say really. It has a fantastic selection of weapons like APHC and Dart, two good staples, but it also gets barrel launched missiles, which are fantastic against hitting helicopters at like hovering at distance, which at 8.3 is really annoying because those helicopters are pretty overpowered, to be honest. And yeah, Russia around this BR has a fantastic set of tanks that can back it up, and it's also a tier 6, so it can grind tier 5 to 7 easily, and at 8.3, and it won't be moving from 8.3, even though it probably should. It's just great value. For $30, this is easily the best vehicle you can use to grind the Russian tank tree. And I know there's another vehicle higher up, but even though it's good, this vehicle is just way too good value, and it's easy to use, and it's at a more forgiving BR. And do not forget that 8.3 full down tiers are ridiculous to face and fun to play, so keep that in mind. Alright, now I'll move on to the slightly more risky vehicles to buy, and I'm saying that just because they're just a bit hard, maybe a little bit hard to play, not as easy to pick up, but still very good vehicles regardless. First up for the more slightly higher risk vehicle to purchase on this list is the Object 120. Now there's nothing inherently wrong with this vehicle at all. It's mostly just that when you're buying this vehicle, you're really like just buying into a certain playstyle, and that is camping and sniping. I mean, if you're a lunatic and want to like kind of brawl a bit with this vehicle, go ahead, but it's definitely not recommended because that barrel is gigantic and is not hard to hit if you're trying to hide behind a corner. And it could also clip through buildings because it's so long. But yeah, this vehicle can just pretty much like click on everything it ever sees and pen it and kill it, so that's like great, but it really does only sit to one play style, and that's sitting back a bit and sniping. And pilot play like that may not be the most fun, and you're also the biggest target for getting revenge bombed. And with the armor this thing has, you will be dying to everything that has a cannon. And if you're also sitting back a lot, you'll run into probably weasels and stuff like that flank around, and you really do have no armor, so you will die super fast to those small vehicles. So is this vehicle good or bad? I'd say it's definitely good. And it definitely it fits into a lineup a lot better than just being played as an individual vehicle like the T55 will. So I still recommend it if you want it, if you're looking to buy it. It's definitely not a bad pick. It's just that it definitely has a playstyle that you may or may not like, so keep that in mind. Now, this I'm putting this in medium risk, but there really isn't much risk to this vehicle at all. The only real downside that I'd say to this vehicle that exists is that it's at 8.7, so if you're not super comfortable with this BR or haven't played it that much, it might be a little bit at first to get used to, especially having all this mobility. It might be a bit rough, but otherwise the BR and the lack of armor, this vehicle is probably one of the most under-tiered premium vehicles in the game for tanks at the moment. At least I'm speaking from tier 4 and above because I don't play lower tiers, so there might be something down there. But yeah, this vehicle is ridiculous. It's got DM33 and thermals and insane mobility at 8.7. Now keep in mind the Centauro Romor, which the Centauros are probably the best wheeled vehicles in the game in general. The Romor is at 9.0 and is worse than this thing. So yeah, keep that in mind. This thing is 8.7, thermals, great weapons, great mobility. Really can't go wrong. If you're looking to grind the British tank tree, this is the only vehicle you should be looking at. There's one later that you obviously know about, but this vehicle is by far the best option. And the benefit of being a wheeled vehicle with good good firepower and thermals and great mobility is that this can literally be up tiered until top tier, if played well, of course, and have a place. Because it's just so fast, you can get to easy places in the map to like snipe people, and you can also sit back and snipe if you want to, because that's obviously just a benefit to having a great gun. So yeah, 100% recommend this if you want to go on a British tree. Now the Type 74 is probably the only vehicle that I sent notes through to Defin on that I've probably changed my mind a bit on. It's still definitely like an okay vehicle to pick up, and it's still very similar to the Leopard 105, but it's definitely, I think, gotten worse since when I last played a Type 74, so I might have been a bit influenced by my memories I had from that. Still okay. Of course, it can get 10.0 up tiers, which are horrible, especially in vehicles like this. So, if you want to, it's in medium risk because, well, it's definitely a solid vehicle, and it's the best Type 74 in the game, go figure. It's not the best vehicle, premium vehicle around this tier. And of course, the Japanese tech tree is kind of just it's pretty meh. Their top tiers are okay. They've got no AA, so you're not really growing towards a lineup that is the best. But it's definitely a solid vehicle. It's got the hydro pneumatic suspension, so better get used to using that. And lastly, I just recommend taking it for a test drive and seeing how it drives, because it may be a bit for what you think. So yeah, I'm actually going to give this one like a cautious buy. Obviously, I have no other choice with Japan at this tier. And if you do grind up the Japanese tree, I'd still recommend talismaning the Type 89 IFE if you like IFEs. But yeah, okay vehicle. Not a bad buy by any means, but just maybe a cautious one. Now this is the second vehicle that we missed that didn't show up on the homepage when you click on the sales link, so thanks Guardian for that. But the Leopard L44 is literally just a Leopard A1A1 with the L44. Not much to say. It's just a very all-around solid tank. The Leopard A1 has been probably one of the best tier 6 MBTs since it was added. Maybe it's fallen off a little bit these days as more competitive stuff's been out to every other nation, but it's still very good. I sadly missed out on the GE sales recommending that because mostly I was just lazy. But if you want to wait for like the Christmas sale, which I can't guarantee will have the same stuff on sale on the tree, maybe the TAM2 IP would be a better buy in the future because it's technically better than this thing, just minus the thermals, and at 8.7 instead of 9.0. But 9.0, this is still a good vehicle. Thermals, very good gun. Very weak armor, but that's to be expected. And getting hit at this tier anyways is pretty rough, so yeah, it's a good vehicle. Probably maybe a bit better buy than what's after this vehicle in the premium selection, but still good. The CV9105. This thing, after being reworked, was probably one of the most pay-to-win vehicles. Just for a few weeks until they got its BR raised, but now it's at 9.7. It's a bit more appropriate. Yeah, this vehicle is very good. Not much really to say. It's got a 5-second reloading DM33 launcher with good thermals and great mobility. The only downside is what you've heard from Devin's video is that this thing has no armor. You will low die to everything. So, but if that's no problem, this vehicle is extremely good. And the good thing is too is that even before they added the finished copy-paste vehicles to the tree, Swedish top tier tanks are excellent. The STRV 122s are the best tanks in the entire game, and no, the BVM with its broken damage model does not make the vehicle the best tank in the game, it just makes it annoying. So the top tier for Sweden is excellent. This vehicle is great. It can still go to top tier as like a backup vehicle even if you want to do that. 10.7 up tiers are going to be a bit rough, so that's why it's in like the more medium risk that its matchmaking can be a bit difficult, but this vehicle, while hard to play perfectly, is very good. Now the Merkava Mark II. I am probably biased when it comes to the Merkavas because it's probably one of my favorite MBT lines in the entire game. It's definitely a very solid vehicle. It definitely trades a lot of the mobility that's more common amongst all the other like NATO vehicles, NATO premium vehicles and MBTs at this tier for having more well-rounded survivability. Don't get me wrong, you're still not going to survive too much in this thing because higher tier is more at positioning over just eating shells. But this vehicle is very solid. It has decent mobility, decent survivability, which you can't say about much at this tier, and it's also very good in hold down because that turret is shaped so weirdly that shells might just get a bit absorbed into weird areas, but it's still not the strongest of turrets, so don't rely on it too much. The only issue really is that the Israeli tree is maybe not the best tree to grind in the game, and that's probably the only cons I can really say about this vehicle. Other than that, it can face 10.3 matches, which can be a bit rough, as the tanks that at that tier fire shells that are so powerful that your survivability may not really mean much anymore. But keep in mind, it's still a very good vehicle that you can play. It's more defensive oriented, so just as long as you keep that in mind, it's very good. Oh yeah, Israeli top tier has no good AA, and their top tier vehicles, while not bad, are a bit average because they reloads are just not as competitive. And finally, in the more medium risk is the AMX30 Super, which is quite frankly still pay to win considering what France has around this BR, and that is not a lot. Is it pay to win as in it'll beat everything else that you face? No, because it's just that it has a stabilizer where all the other tanks around this tier do, on their BR in this tree do not. Definitely a good buy. It's if you want to grind higher tier France, this is the best bet, obviously, because as I said, the tree's a bit sparse around here, and unless you want to bring in like the 9.7 tanks or 9.3 MX32 or whatever it is, this is your best bet. It's very fast, has a good gun, thermals, stabilizer, and it has a hull that functions similar to the BVM, and if you get shot, the post-pen spawning is questionable at best, so you might be able to take a few more shots than you might expect, but still it's played like a light tank, and yeah, nothing bad I can really say about it other than it's just a high BR vehicle, so 10.0 matches are a thing, so just be careful, but very good tank otherwise. So now let's move on to the final few vehicles, which I just put as higher risk, not because they're bad vehicles by any means, like none of the upcoming vehicles are bad, but it's just that the BRs they can face can be quite rough, and I'd probably recommend against for newer players or people that just haven't played top tier that much, really. Alright. Thankfully, there's not many more vehicles to cover because I'm getting kind of sick of talking to myself, but first we're starting off with the XM1. Now, the XM1, I'll just straight up say is a decent vehicle that is worth your money, but keep in mind that since most vehicles the US have around this BR are kind of slow, or previously before this BR are kind of slow, that if you're going from like a slower US vehicle to this vehicle, you might find it a bit easy to overextend yourself and get yourself into a situation that just end up dying instantly because this vehicle is very fast. While it may be very fast, however, its armor is very not great. It can pretty much be easily penned by everything it faces, even like an 8.3 IFVs, such as the Type 89 can pen its turret ring easily. And facing vehicles like the Puma and the whatever the Russian fantasy IFV is they added recently, that thing can easily go through the thing's turret. But otherwise, it's a very good vehicle. It has an average gun, great mobility, has thermals, so you have to probably think of it maybe like a higher tier M18 or something like that, where you're looking for more opportunities to kill people that are unaware than facing people head on, because you'll face a lot of vehicles at this tier that do have quite good armor, and while you can still pen them in like their weak spots, which sometimes may be like small or very big, your whole tank is a weak spot, so keep that in mind. Definitely an okay vehicle that I wouldn't recommend against, but it may just be a bit harder to get used to if you've not played something that's this fast that relies more on positioning and flanking and awareness than like certain other vehicles here. Speaking of certain other vehicles, we have the Glue Eating Special, which is played by literally everyone that has 3 IQ or never played any other top tier vehicle before. Because the TURMS is a very strong vehicle that often gets misused or just played by people that just don't know what they're doing. And what should you be doing in this vehicle? Good question, because I don't know what I'm doing either. I'm joking aside, it's got very strong frontal armor, typical of the T72 series. Not strong enough to stop like more high pen rounds that can just low pen straight through the frontal armor. It's also got a good turret armor, and it has a very strong gun with good thermals. So yeah, it's a very good sniping vehicle. Definitely played a bit more slower than the other vehicles around this tier, but not much I can really say other than it's a very strong vehicle. But if you wanted to get a tier 6 premium for Russia, I would always recommend the T55 AM1 over this thing. Because while this thing is good, the teams around this tier are horrifically bad. And pretty much every nation these days after this update will be one death leaving. So getting the T55 AM1, in my opinion, is just undoubtedly the better choice. It's, I think, around the same price. I can't remember. And they're both tier 6, so they both can research all the way to the Russian top tier, which, as we know at this point, over the past year or so, it has pretty much been stomping everyone, not because their vehicles should be stomping everyone, but because Gaijin refuses to fix them. Definitely a good vehicle if you want a backup for higher tier or don't care and just like higher tier vehicles. Very good. Not the fastest, great firepower, great sniping. Overall, it's good in general, but keep in mind that unlike the T80 series, you do take post-pen damage, so you will detonate if you get shot in the side. Ah, look, it's the same vehicle, but with a different camera. Kidding aside, it is literally basically identical in playstyle, except your upper plate is hilariously strong, or your upper plate is gigantic and weaker. The side armor of this thing is also weaker because it's got more similar side armor to more like a NATO-ish vehicle, so it's thinner, whereas the Russian tanks have like stronger side armor. Keep in mind that won't really matter much against other MBTs, but like lighter vehicles like IVs or AA can easily pan the side of this vehicle compared to a Russian tank, which might need a more flat side and longer ranges, might be more immune. Otherwise, good vehicle. Turret is definitely a lot weaker. Chinese turrets have like a really big weak point around the gun, and its side and rear armor on the turret is just as bad as the rest of the hull. Keep in mind though, if you want to wait till, since I missed the GE sale, the other tier 6 vehicles in the Chinese tech tree are hilariously strong or even under tiered, like the WMA or the Type 69 2G or whatever the hell that vehicle is. China has a lot of vehicles around tier 6 that are premium that are probably more easy to play and less a bit more forgiving, because 9.7 vehicles is 9.7 is just becoming a death BR where just fun goes to die. So it's definitely good like the terms, but there may be like lower BR same tier options if you want to go around the top tier. And Chinese top tier these days I think is pretty good. They have a decent MBT and they actually have a proper top tier AA. So a good tree to invest in if you want like good lower tier vehicles that are like a best of each nation, and top tier vehicles which are kind of copy paste but sort of indigenous. So yeah. Okay, second last vehicle to cover is the Leopard 2A4 pack, which I'll probably say is probably the best all round high tier premium that's in the game. Not to say it's overpowered at all, it's definitely not, but it's definitely one of the more well rounded ones. Its armor is okay, side armor is terrible, frontal armor is sometimes okay, the turret armor is it's average. The breach is very big and can take a lot of post-pen damage, but you have fantastic mobility, like some of the best for this BR, while having a decent gun, and while you're paying $30 for a camera net being put on it, can actually be basically is better than just slapping a tank in bushes. So it's very good. It can definitely work at higher tiers or top tiers as a backup vehicle if you don't have like the Leopard 2 PL or any of the 100 other vehicles there. So it's very good. But the main problem is that this vehicle is 10.0. So you will be facing top tier a lot. And while it's definitely a top tier capable vehicle, it's definitely a step below actual top tier vehicles that will just click on you and instantly kill you. So keep that in mind, that while this vehicle is very good, and I won't recommend against it, but if you're like a newer player or aren't ready to like just get clubbed by people that play top tier all the time, that getting a lower BR-T6 vehicle would definitely be my recommendation. Whether that's either Leopard L44 or one of the GE premiums for the Christmas sale, I'd either wait or just at least go into this knowing what you're going to be facing. And I've saved the best for last, the Challenger 1 Desert Storm. Truly a vehicle of all time. Technically, there's nothing inherently terrible about this vehicle, it's just that it's a Challenger 1. If you're going to be buying into what is basically one step away from a top tier vehicle, it's just its gun's good, its hull is very poor outside the upper plate, and even then you've got the driver's port weakness. The turret armor is average, you'll be facing tanks that can just click on you anywhere, and while it's definitely a very solid camping tank or like defensive tank, the Rooikat exists for a reason. And there's a reason why I emphasize the Rooikat so much when I was talking about it, and that's because this thing is just This thing is just average at its BR, whereas the Rooikat is hilariously good for its BR. So honestly, I'm just gonna be completely honest and just say that this vehicle is just really not worth picking up, unless you like really like challenger ones, which I did in the past, and I haven't really played one in like 3 years. But yeah, I'd probably just suggest against it unless you're adamant on getting a vehicle at this BR. I thought I'd quickly end off this pack recommendations by covering the 2 helicopters, because I think I saw someone asking for it in Defin's video that he probably should have covered. But seeing as there's only 2 helicopters on sale, I'll quickly go over them. The K50 is pretty much like, goes without saying, is the best premium helicopter in the game you can buy. It's got Vickers, which have 10 km range, great speed, which is often overlooked for helicopter missiles, and they're dual purpose, so you can shoot down planes, helicopters, and tanks with them, which seems fair and balanced. Its gun it has horrific fire angles, but it's very strong. So if you want to defend yourself against planes, best to use the Vickers first, and then position yourself well enough that you can use the autocannon in a last ditch attempt to try and save yourself. So the only real issue is that this vehicle, the K50, does not have thermals and has very narrow firing angles due to how the camera works on this thing. So at night battles, it's may not be the best helicopter in the game. It's probably might be one of the weaker since you can't really see anything. And the AA at this tier is thankfully very strong. So now these days you're not as like stupidly easy to play as you were before. So it's still very good. If you want to use it in heli PvE, it is the best grinder in the game. And seeing as the Russian heli tree actually has some excellent top tier helis, like the Mi-28 and NM, I think it is, and the K-52, you definitely are grinding towards very good helicopters that can easily replace this in the future. Z19E, I have the tech tree version. It has decent air-to-ground missiles, not the best, certainly not terrible. It has thermals, and it has T-190s. So I didn't use this thing at all to kill tanks, even though it definitely can do that well. I just used it as an anti-aircraft platform with the T-190s to shoot down planes. So definitely a fun vehicle. For $25, it's not bad. It can definitely work as a backup for your tank lineup. It's just that as a premium heli, even though you can do a lot of grinding in heli PvE, you have to really ask yourself, do you really want to grind the Z10? Because as it stands right now, the Z10 is not a very good, it's probably one of the weakest top tier helicopters. While its ATGMs have a lot of pen, don't overlook the fact that they are very slow, and the Z10 also flies like a brick. So keep that in mind. This thing is very fun against planes. It's very workable against tanks. So it's definitely not bad. $25 is not bad, but this thing here is also $25, which is generally a very good helicopter. So keep in mind, if you want one of these, I won't say no to either, but this thing is better as an anti-air platform compared to this. But this can do everything. Well, this can do both things, but better anti-air and very weak, a lot weaker against ground compared to this. But this has thermals and this doesn't, so keep that in mind. And with that, that's probably everything I covered, and I've been rambling to myself for like half an hour, which is awful. So yeah, thanks for watching this far if you have, and I'm sorry if you have watched this far and had to listen to me this whole time. Well, no.